You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Ancient tools and burials, plants and seeds, Neanderthals. All these things we make no apology are the study of archaeology.
Welcome to the Archaeological Fantasies Podcast, episode 45. I'm your host, Sarah, with my co-host today, Ken Fader. Today we're interviewing Nigel Hetherington from Past Preservers. We talked to him about his company and how they provide professional archaeologists and historians for a wide variety of media, including television shows produced by such illustrious channels as the History Channel, National Geographic, and the Travel Channel. Nigel tells us about some upcoming projects that his company is working on and about how you can become an expert for Past Preservers as well. Get ready to think critically.
We'll see are a staple of archaeology, but we don't do dinosaurs. No, we don't do dinosaurs. No, we don't do dinosaurs.
Welcome to the Archaeological Fantasies Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm here today with my co-host, Ken. How's it going?
It's good, Sarah. How are you?
It's good. And today
Excellent.
we have a special guest, Nigel Hetherington of Past Preservers, which is a media company that provides professional archaeologists and historians to a wide variety of different media outlets. So, Nigel, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Hi there. Good evening, good afternoon, what it is with you. My name is Nigel Hetherington. As you said, my company is called Past Preservers. I'm an archaeologist by training. Egyptology was my speciality, Egyptian archaeology. That's where I was working when actually the idea came to me and my partner at the time, business partner Kelly Krause, for Past Preservers. We were working in the Valley of the Kings, which, as you can imagine, gets a lot of attention from the media. And we worked with a very high-profile Egyptologist called Kent Weeks. I mean, recently we had a production in the UK that needed 50 experts, 50 different experts. So all shows have a problem, recruiting people, not just your sort of, your paranormal Egypts and things like that. We do have an issue trying to get people to sign up for these things. The younger people are more inclined to sign up for it, definitely. But often the TV shows want a bit more gravitas than that as well. They're looking for someone with a doctorate. They're looking for someone with, a reasonable level of experience in their field.
Well, not everybody is comfortable in front of a camera, and there are colleagues of mine who I know would say, "Yeah, I'll do this, but I need an hour and 12 minutes, just the camera on my face, describing what answering your question." And of course, no TV show is going to do that. No TV documentary could survive doing that.
No, which is why one of the things we do a lot, and we push people to make as much video as possible. We have to have a video as part of our application process, so we need to see what someone's going to be like on camera. And so we get them to shoot those on their phones or whatever camera they can get hold of. It doesn't need to be, incredibly high-end with special lighting and cameras and this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. If all they've got is their phone, we say, fine, then shoot it on your phone. And the more of those they do, obviously the first one they send in to us sometimes is a little bit, doesn't show their best side. And then eventually I say to them, do another, have another go, or get a friend to do it with you, or talk through, or write a little bit of a script out about yourself, or a particular, or if you're sure about, if you're nervous about talking about yourself, which some people are, think of a particular subject that fascinates you or a particular part of history and tell us about that and why it interests you. And then that gets them, excited because it's some kind of, they're one of their pet interests. So we find that the more that we push people to provide video, the more video they do, they get better, of course. They're getting over those issues they have with seeing themselves, played back, which it is. It can be very, disconcerting the first time you see yourself.
Absolutely.
So, since we're on the topic, do you vet your presenters at all? Do you ever get people who send stuff in and you're just like, no?
Obviously, we get a lot of applications in. We get them in, when we're not particularly doing a particular posting or a casting or job. They come in, on a daily basis. So, but what our clients expect from us is that we're going to pick the best in their field. So the first things that we're looking for is obviously expertise in a particular subject area. But we like to have a wide range of experts, obviously. So we are looking really for the presence that someone can have on camera. And that can be helped, as I said, by if they make more videos, they get more confident. So it's not about, age, gender, this sort of thing, or what someone looks like. Got to get the expertise right. They can build up the presence on camera and get more used to dealing with it. But I think it comes down to, some people just naturally have it. They're able to ignore the camera in many ways. One of the biggest issues is getting people that can actually walk and talk at the same time. It actually is it is an issue. A lot of presenters, full-time presenters, will tell you that's like the first thing they need to learn, because they end up falling over, and or if they've got to move an object or something like that. So if someone's showing us, objects they're working on and things, people tend to go to pieces, or they don't look at the camera because they're touching the object. So these things, can be learned. People get better, but yes, we do have to have a selection process. So we will whittle down the applications we get, and we'll supply the best of those applications to our client. And then our client will then want to interview the person and to take it forward. Then they will normally then present them to the network, who will then want to interview them, particularly if it's a presenter position. If it's an expert, they'll leave it with the production company's judgment for that person. But if it's obviously someone who's going to have their own show, it can take a long time. And we're currently, in negotiations at the moment that have gone on for 3 or 4 months with networks over a particular producer. So these things can take time.
One of the other things that your site says that you provide is research and background research. So my question here is, for shows that deal with the fringe, when you provide this background research for them, what are they asking you for, if you can tell us, and how do they use it after you give it to them? Or do you even see them use it, or it just becomes seamless?
Sometimes it's a very broad brush type of a review. For instance, sometimes people will ask us, say, what is the particular work going on in a particular area? So say in Egypt, can you provide us details of current excavations, and reach out to that community and do some research on that behalf? Or they would say, maybe we did one recently where a show about Cleopatra was being made, and they wanted us basically to sum up everything that was known about Cleopatra. So the theories, the media hype, the rest of it, provide that on a very simple laid out document to them that said, look, these are the facts, these are the myths, and these are the current theories. So of course, with someone like Cleopatra, it's wonderful to do something like that, because the vast majority of it is myth and rumor. There are very actually few hard facts. And of course, when you go to them and then say, actually, these are the hard facts, some people, including my father, when I had this discussion with him, wouldn't believe me. It was like, no, they must know more than that about her. And with someone so historically, well known, we think, you would think that we would know everything there is to know about her, but of course we don't, because the majority of things we know about Cleopatra are actually from early historians, and then later embellished by Hollywood.
Right.
So everyone thinks of Elizabeth Taylor and all this sort of thing. So with the production company, we had to kind of root them in reality, because they wanted to make a show that was very rooted in literally, because they were doing a show about an archaeologist whose life has been dedicated to the search for Cleopatra. So from her point of view, she's going to find her. But from their point of view, they really wanted to know, is she actually going to find her? So can you tell us, is she? And I was quite frank with them from the minute I saw them. I said, I might be talking myself out of a job, but I don't actually think she is going to find her. But it's a fantastic, wonderful story to cover in a documentary, because the whole world is captivated by Cleopatra.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to go to break real quick, and when we come back, we'll keep talking with Nigel Hetherington.
The Archaeology Podcast Network's conference channel is a collection of interviews from conferences around the world. Interviews are usually posted during the conference with minimal editing, so you, the listener, can be there virtually. Check out the conference feed at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/conferences. Now let's get back to the show.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
And we are back, and we are talking with Nigel Hetherington, and I wanted to ask you a question about your appearance on the first season of America Unearthed. And you were brought in as an expert, and Scott Walter, the host of the show, presented you with a river rock that had what he tries to claim is a carving of an Apis bull.
And where was this found?
Where was this found?
Wasn't it in Minnesota or somewhere?
Oh, okay.
Somewhere quite odd.
So the Midwest, American Midwest. Okay.
Yeah. And it was the finding story of it is very fishy to begin with. And the whole episode's it's an episode. But you were the Egyptologist expert that they brought in, and I was really impressed with how you handled this. But can you tell us about how you were presented with this stone, what you thought about it? Were you given any warning beforehand? Were you able to research it at all, or was it just kind of fly off the cuff kind of thing?
I had a little bit of knowledge of the show. They told me the premise of the show, because I think this was the first season. It was the second season, but they told me the premise of the show and what Scott did and etc., his background, and that he was looking at objects that basically were kind of misplaced in time and space as such. So I knew roughly what it'd be, and obviously being an Egyptologist, I knew it was obviously something to do with Egypt that they were going to unwrap for me. But I didn't see it, until the day, and I flew out to their studios to do the shoot. And so they unveiled it, and straight away, I could tell where they got the idea that it was, connected to Egypt, ancient Egypt, but because it was this allegedly Apis bull figure. To me, it looked like a bull, and it looked like quite a lot of ancient bull figures you see, but certainly it wasn't Egyptian. Obviously, impossible to date
Right.
a rock that had been in a river, as such, a riverbed. Strange objects turned up all over the place. You just never know that, someone could have carved it, very, very recently and then just threw it out, for all we know. But the production company, as I said, I have a long history with them. So I knew that I was being invited in as someone who was actually going to stand up to him and actually was going to, sort of have a debate about the object and why it couldn't be ancient Egyptian, and why it wasn't even a very good copy of an ancient Egyptian object. So I did feel, I got a few people asking me when I was telling them what I was going to do. They're like, "Oh, are you sure about that?" And I was like, "Look, no, I know the production company. I know what they're like. I know this isn't going to be something that's kind of, I'm going on to say, oh, yes, I think it could be ancient Egyptian."
Mm-hmm.
I liked the way when you presented on the show, I liked the way, because I've watched most of the first season now, and Walter has a habit of just kind of steamrolling whoever he's talking to. It doesn't matter if they're an expert in favor or an expert not in favor. But I think you're the first person and the only person on the show so far that's kind of turned the table on him and kind of asked him why he thinks the things that he does. Because I remember there was a point where you were asking him why he thought the carving was an Apis bull, or you asked him what the wavy lines on the back of the bull was, and he said blood because it had been sacrificed. And you were just kind of like, well, why do you think that? And why do you think it has to be an Apis bull? Why can't it be a bison or something like that? And I liked that because, like I said, you're the only person I've seen on the show do that so far.
I think part of that, not to kind of blow my own trumpet, but obviously I've got, a reasonable amount of media experience in front and behind the camera. So obviously, they're friends of mine, the production company folks. So I felt comfortable in their environment. Another expert may have not. This is why, one of the things we try to do is to get people to feel comfortable in the environment they're going to be in, to actually say if they don't want to talk about a particular subject, if they don't want to, answer a particular question, to actually stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's what we're here to be, represent the experts and the media. And it is a fine line sometimes, because obviously the media want one thing and the experts want to be shown in another way. But we try and give both the confidence to ask what they want and to mediate between them. So I think this show, definitely, I was told from the beginning, was going to be one that where the expert was there to challenge the presenter, and to say why this couldn't possibly be true, but also not to be totally negative and say, well, actually, I can understand why someone might think it looks ancient Egyptian, but it's not.
Right. Now, have you ever had an experience where you've had to turn down a production company? They've come to you, they need an expert, you've seen the work that they've done, and it's so egregiously bad that there just is no way you would want one of the people you represent to participate. Has that ever happened, or can you foresee that ever happening?
I think now we have more experience. There are certain people that we wouldn't work with, but that's more to do with actually the way they work, their professional reputation, and often it comes down to actually people who don't pay their bills and things like that.
Right. Okay.
That is completely unacceptable in any industry, quite frankly. And also people who you feel quite uncomfortable working with. You just don't have a good vibe. And obviously, as a business grows, you can make any business, that is, you can make those decisions not to work, not to turn down a particular job. But we do try to help the media in finding someone. If it's a particular show that, say, is more fringe than mainstream, then obviously, our first call is to reach out to the student population or something like that. We'll be more happy to do it. Or if someone wants to appear to do research, particularly on a show, but may not want their name known, so we will say to the production company, sorry, he or she will do the work for you, but they don't want the credit, and they're quite happy to do that. So, yeah, I mean, there are some companies out there I'm not too happy, I wouldn't want to work with, but in the main, again, those kind of production companies don't last. And so there aren't really, any currently out there that I would try to avoid.
Okay, fair enough.
Can you go over one of the new projects that you're working with, because you're talking about the different production companies, and earlier you had mentioned new forms of media that are becoming important for reaching out and basically educating the public. And you were talking about a YouTube channel that's getting ready to launch that you're working with in league with an encyclopedia?
Yeah. Actually, just today, it was the launch of the History Etc. It's going to be called, a new YouTube series from the founders of the Ancient History Encyclopedia and ourselves. They are a wonderful online resource. It's the biggest now ancient history encyclopedia online. They're getting in crazy numbers of views and figures, something like 1.5 million hits per month, unique visitors. So, it is, as I said, a fantastic resource that young people are turning to. So we were, absolutely over the moon to help them out with actually producing video and getting some content up there. They wanted their own content. So actually, going back on what we said before, that we said we don't produce our own content, we actually have worked closely with the producer and the presenters to actually produce the content. So they're short films that will actually, just be 3 or 4 minutes, which will kind of, debunk maybe possibly, or demystify, or sort of provide a extra level of information on the subject. So for instance, if you go to Mesopotamia on their website, you'll find a film that will then give you an insight into Mesopotamia. The idea is that we will have films on most of their top definitions. So we'll start with those and we'll work on to the others. So our presenters, Sheila Hoffman and Trevor Wallace, who were selected, we had a wonderful, huge casting competition over 18 months ago, and we got hundreds of entrants. And the good thing with this is the presenters actually get to write their own material. So there was a lot of interest from young researchers, young scholars who wanted to write their own scripts for these shows. So this is a wonderful sort of new media. young people and actually even old folks like us, people are viewing media in different ways now. They're viewing media on tablets, they're viewing media on their phones, they're watching YouTube, they're not watching network TV. So things are changing, with the launch of Amazon Prime and Netflix and this kind of thing. So we want to be part of that. We want to be part of developing new content. So this is a fantastic opportunity. Just as when we were approached by Sega to make the films for their computer games, of course, we want to get into that world too. I don't think mainstream media is going anywhere soon. I think it'll be around for a long time, but the new media as such is going to increasingly take a lot of that marker. And obviously we want to be part of that.
So I want to ask you some kind of hard-hitting questions, and you can dodge them if you want. You have in the past, and you probably will in the future, continue to participate in the making of shows that deal with the fringe. How do you as a professional archaeologist, how do you balance that? Because do they tell you what the shows are about when they come and ask you to be on them?
Absolutely. We get told what the show's about. We get sent a show outline. We have to often sign non-disclosure agreements and things like this to be able to get information from them. But that's kind of normal in a lot of businesses.
Right.
But we know what we're getting involved with, yes. And we weigh it up depending on who we will actually fit to the project. I would say rather than fringe, I would say that these are what are mainstream topics of interest to the public. Cleopatra, Tutankhamun, ancient Rome, warfare, these kind of things, shipwrecks, etc. There's a huge interest.
Those kind of topics I don't consider fringe.
Right.
When I'm using the word fringe, I'm referring to things like, I don't know, have you guys been involved with Ancient Aliens?
No, absolutely not. Wouldn't do that.
Well, right. So shows like that, Ancient Aliens, I know you guys have done a little bit with Americana Earth, and a show that sounds wonderfully awful, the Haunted or Paranormal Egypt, I believe it is.
Yes, that's right. And we also did, actually, one of our experts did research for Search for the Lost Giants.
Nice.
Which actually they took it on board with the information that we provided. He debunked everything that these people claimed these giants in America, and that was the our sort of terms of business with them, is that our archaeologist was providing research for the other side of the argument. Whether they decided to use it in the final show, I don't know. I never saw it.
So when you go into these shows, or you're asked to participate in these shows, you guys make it a point to say, we are professionals, we're going to provide you with facts, whether they back your story up or not. And the production companies are okay with that.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, I think there's a misconception that, someone starts off with an idea to make a show that's full of baloney. What happens is that, say someone starts to touch a historical figure such as Tutankhamun or Cleopatra, to use as another example, is they suddenly find out that actually lots of things that they know as a sort of just an individual with a very good, a lot of these people have a very good education, degrees, etc. sort of thing. But they suddenly find out actually most of what they know is just myths, rumors, theories. And so it can be quite, disconcerting for the producer who sets off on a research journey to find out actually a lot of the things they've seen before on TV shows are not true, or they are just theories. So often that can kind of, cloud the judgment of where these shows go to. But we try to steer them to a different course and say, actually, well, okay, there may be lots of myths and rumors and this sort of thing about these characters, but actually, did you know X, Y, Z? For instance, Cleopatra, one of the things we managed to get into the show was that her children, very little is actually done in research as well about what happened to her children, and also what happened to her after the Battle of Actium and before she dies. According to some Egyptologists, that actually could be anything up to 90 days or 6 months. So what was she doing? Where are those missing days? That, to me, is a fantastic documentary in its own right. So what we try and do is steer them into a new research area that they can look into too. Meanwhile, obviously they'll want to cover the stuff, did she really dissolve a pearl, and did she, try and kill her servants by practicing poisons on them? But if we can steer them to also something else and some new research and new excavations, then we'll try and do that.
Yeah, I mean that sounds great, and I'm sure that applies to shows that you're referring to. But there still will be a residuum of shows like Ancient Aliens that have bullshit at its very core. Its very reason for existing is to promulgate bullshit. And that becomes a lot more problematic. But as you say, you've never been involved with Ancient Aliens, but certainly the legendary Giant show had at its very core was bullshit. And I think we would, at least maybe Sarah and I, or I would argue that America Unearthed has at its very core a core of bullshit that I can't get past.
Yeah, exactly. But we've done over, 30 projects, and I appeared as a talking head on one episode of I don't know how many series is there. We've done everything from PBS to the BBC to, we've just done a series of small promotional films for Tutankhamun, exhibitions around the world where we've, worked on the script and translated the scripts and this sort of thing. So, and we've worked on a film that's actually just been presented later next week at the Berlin Film Festival. Nothing Escapes My Eyes. We filmed with them in Cairo. It's about the Opera House. It's the first film we've ever done, a short film, but it was wonderful to do a film because we've never been involved in that world. So we try to, choose new areas to get involved with. As I said, the online world, the gaming world, the film world. So we can say to people, we also, we've assisted authors in the past as well, doing their research on their books. What we want to be able to do is that all of the sort of media world can come to us and we can put them in touch with the right people. They can, if it's an expert or they need a researcher, they need a presenter, need someone to hold their hand through the process that they're going through, they should be able to come to the academic world and get entry to it. And I suppose we're the gatekeepers, if anything.
I like that. Can I ask you why you would not, because you said you would never be involved with a show like Ancient Aliens. Can I ask you specifically why, or is that a bridge too far?
Well, we never got approached. No, I mean, the thing is, I don't really know too much about it, as I say, because I don't tend to watch a lot of those kind of things. But obviously, say, for instance, someone came to me and they said, okay, we're going to make UK aliens. Has the world... was Stonehenge or, built by aliens? And I would say, okay, so what is it? So they'd have, obviously the UFO guy who believes in all this stuff.
Right.
And I would say, okay, so I want an archaeologist, I want a scientist, and I want a debunker as part of the team. If that was the show, that would be great. I'm really interested in what is fringe archaeology and what people want to believe with Egypt particularly. I mean, it's huge. And everyone you ever meet, and you say you're Egyptologist, they start asking you about all these crazy theories. And so the public do, they have this appetite for these theories, these larger than life stories. So if there was a show that covered that, but was happy to show the other side and why the archaeologists, moan and groan when they hear these stories again, then yeah, I'd love to do that, because I'd love to challenge the people who believe that archaeology, he's hiding the secrets, or that Zahi Hawass has got a secret tunnel to the Sphinx in his old office and all this sort of stuff. Where do they get these ideas from? Where do they come from? Why do they want to believe them? I think it's fascinating.
I think that would make a great show. Someone
yes, absolutely.
Someone should go to your website and propose that.
Yes, they should. Download the form now. I would do that one without hesitation. But I think there are shows that, yes, if they came to us, that unless they were providing that kind of forum for both sides of the argument, then it would have to be a no, because I know that our experts would feel exploited. They wouldn't enjoy the experience, and ultimately we would be criticized for it. I mean, years ago, I did a show in Egypt called Chasing Mummies, and I worked on that show for 9 months with Zahir Oas. It was meant to be a sort of reality TV show about his life when he was the head of the what was then the Supreme Council of Antiquities. It's now a ministry. But I knew from the beginning that I was approached that it was the kind of show that was going to actually have to be made in Egypt following a minister was going to have to be one that a lot of it really, you wouldn't get the insights into the world. It's not like if you followed someone in the US, etc. A minister here is not going to allow that kind of access that the program makers would like. So, of course, even though we covered lots of amazing discoveries and wonderful things happening in Egypt over 9 months, a lot of the time it came down to just following the kids that were on the show and what they were getting up to. So, of course, I remember being interviewed for some TV show, and they said to me, oh, aren't you ashamed of it? And I was like, of course I'm not ashamed of it. Or whatever. It's actually quite funny, even though history didn't want it to be a funny show. They're not too happy that it was funny. And it became a cult TV show in the UK, which is always good. And it's just fun. It's entertainment. And at the same time, we can make something like that, but we can then do a series on the ancient world with Wild Dreams and get the best experts in the world to talk about their work and what they're doing, and tell the world, this is what archaeology really is. This is what historians do. And I think you can do both.
I think you have more success over in Britain than you do here in America, because I know that Time Team America was Time Team was an incredibly long-running show, very popular, had a very strong following, still has a huge fan base. Here in America, it was a beautiful show, and we've talked to the people involved with it several times now on the channels, but the first season was paid for. The second season they got a grant for it, and that was great, but there's no money for a third season. And I mean, most people don't even realize that there was a Time Team America. No. And but if you ask them about a show like Ancient Aliens or America Unearthed or Diggers or whatever the new Pot Hunter show is, they all know what those shows are. And they take it seriously here. Like, you keep saying over there, it's like, that's a joke. Everybody knows it's a joke. They don't know it's a joke here. And that's the problem. Like, people see these shows, and they think they're authentic, and that's not your fault at all. That's a problem that we have with the media
that's
here.
An issue, with the public. But I think, Time Team, the Time Team format the Time Team format of the US show was different to the UK one. I think the format of the UK show would have been better transported over. It's a great show, but as I said, I don't think it was seen by many people. There were, fantastic presenters on there who are now on our books as presenters. And I think also it got a bad slot. I mean, I think initially it went out in the summer, which couldn't quite understand why PBS would do that. I mean, who watches TV in the summer? So, it did seem that almost they didn't give it much of a chance.
Well, let's go to break real quick, and when we come back, we will wrap up our discussions with Nigel Hetherington.
Hosted by archaeologist Emily Long, Trial Tales is an archaeology podcast with stories told by archaeologists about the crazy world of archaeology. Emily weaves a tale of wonder and excitement with her intriguing questions and imaginative editing skills. Check out Trial Tales today at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/Trial Tales. Now let's get back to the show.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By honoring your sacred vocation of nursing, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. At Grand Canyon University, our online RN to BSN, MSN, or DNP degree programs allow you to balance online coursework with local in-person clinical, practicum, or immersion hours. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
And we are back, and we are still talking with Nigel Hetherington from Past Preservers. Can I think I'm kind of dancing around this question, and you kind of have answered it a little bit, but I'd like to get a solid, spread from this. But as someone who is involved with media production, and like you said, you're a professional archaeologist, you've been in the field for a while, what do you think your responsibilities are as a professional archaeologist presenting archaeology to the public through forums such as television and now movies and even YouTube?
I think that we have a duty as archaeologists to engage with the public, or all of the the social sciences as such as well. We need to reach out to people. We need to explain what we're doing. Often, there are public funds spent on what we're doing. And people are interested. People are fascinated by cultures such as ancient Egypt. They're fascinated by archaeology and history. There's a huge appetite for it. If you look at the numbers of people who go to historical sites in the UK alone, it's a phenomenal number of people. So it's important. And for us at Past Preservers, what we've been trying to do over the years, and we've got to that point now where the company's changed quite a bit from our original ideas, is that we're reaching out now to people and saying the networks directly. We can do that. We've done enough productions. We can open doors to them and say, look, okay, we've got these two young people, or we've got this project, or we've heard about this new discovery. You need to know about it, and you should get out there and make a show about it. So we can open those doors. And if they're not interested as well, then we have other channels that we can go through, like developing a YouTube channel. We hope eventually with the Ancient History Encyclopedia YouTube channel to actually have news on that. So every week we'll go out into the field and find out what is going on around the world. That is increasingly how people are finding out their news about archaeology and the past as well, is from citizen sort of journalism as such.
Yes.
We have a good friend who has a wonderful website and Facebook page, Heritage Daily. It's one of the biggest news portals for heritage and archaeology and history. He's built that up himself because the mainstream media weren't covering news stories in the way he felt they should be. They were just reporting when something was, the oldest, the biggest, the one, the most valuable kind of thoughts.
I call that artifact porn.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with archaeology or history or anything like that. It's just, ooh, big, shiny, here, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. And so, we want to work with people like Heritage Daily. We want to work with people, Ancient History Encyclopedia. They have huge audiences. They have devoted followers who go to them to either do their research because they're doing their work for college or school, or because they want to find out the latest news and post it to Facebook or their Twitter accounts. So we have to be connected to them. That is the future of storytelling. That's the future of reaching people about what we're doing in the archaeological world. And we can reach them so quickly as well. It's an instant thing. And so definitely it's something that we're trying now to find a way into that world, to work with those people and to develop new types of media. So we're really excited that we're not saying that these projects that we've done in the past, that's the end of them. Of course, it's not. We continue to work with the media to get experts to improve their shows, to provide research for them. But we also want to help shape shows on our own.
Yeah, I think the really important, one really important point you made is that people do want to hear stories about antiquity. And as you say, the attendance at historical sites and heritage sites in the UK is very high. I think it's the same here in the United States, that Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon and Cahokia and a host of other places, get very high attendance records. People want to see, they want to know, they want to hear stories about these very interesting places. And if we leave it, if we disengage from that public interest, we leave that field open to folks who are not necessarily looking at a scientific, or not applying science to finding out what happened in the past. And so if we as archaeologists don't have the wherewithal to produce our own shows, the next best thing is something like Past Preservers, where we make ourselves available to those shows that are being made, to lend that voice of science and experience and expertise to their discussions of the myriad stories about human antiquity. And that's an important thing.
I think,
yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think it's really important that, people reach out, not just to us and sign up on our database. Obviously, we want people to do that, but also to get in touch with Ancient History Encyclopedia and write articles and write, definitions and these sort of things for the encyclopedia, or get in touch with Ancient Heritage Daily and, write articles for that about your dig. Or produce your own, you can do your own YouTube channel and get out blogs about your excavation or your research.
Right.
There's some of the, biggest online blogs are to do with history and archaeology. People, as I said, there's a huge market for that kind of material, and people want to hear it firsthand, not secondhand as well.
I think one of the interesting things that I've heard you bring up through this entire podcast, though, is the whole concept. You keep saying it's good TV. And I think you and Ken both just hit it on the head here with the story part. When you're saying it's good TV, you're not saying, to me, what I'm hearing is, because I think good TV is like factual and it has evidence and it's not joking around and it's got this and that. But what you're saying is it's entertaining. It's going to hold people's attention, and it's going to make people want to come back and watch episode 2 as opposed to never come back again.
Well, I think you can do both. I mean, if you look at something like, say, natural history on TV, of course, there's not a lot of joking around with David Attenborough or something, but it's entertaining. The thing is that he engages with the public. He makes you want to find out more about those ants or whatever he's talking about at a particular time. And, I think the presenter has to know their subject. They have to be able to engage with the public and get them to want to sit there, for half an hour or an hour, and not get up and change the channel or go and make a cup of tea or whatever. So I think you can do both, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's the very well-known archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler, who said, "Dead archaeology is the driest dust that blows." And that's true. We can make it dead, and people will not be at all interested, and they'll flock to something entertaining and interesting like Ancient Aliens. Or we can make sure that the real deal archaeology that we present on shows like, if it's America Unearthed or any of these others, at least people will be excited by what we are saying and how we're saying.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. It's like the way that you make a documentary today is not the way that you made a documentary in like the 70s.
No.
Those documentaries are chocked full of what they thought was information at the time, but they're kind of boring.
Yes.
But the stuff that makes it on TV, and one of the reasons why Ancient Aliens does as well as it does, and America Unearthed did as well as it did, because it's actually off the air now. But they're fun to watch. I mean, I don't like the content in the show, and like half of the show is just epic driving, Scott Walter driving his car around with some epic music playing in the background, but it's entertaining.
But I think there are ways. I mean, for instance, one show that we did, I think, which kind of sits on both of those fences. We did Brewmasters with Dogfish Head Brewery, and a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago actually now, and we did reasonably well in the US. It was a US transmitted show, and they looked at ancient beers and wines and went around the world with Patrick McGovern, who's fantastic professor, and he is the world expert on sort of ancient beers and wines. And they went to different countries around the world basically and remade these old brews, and then Dogfish Head sold them in their shops and breweries. If it worked, essentially, if it came out tasting that's something that the public would want. But they came to Egypt, and we made an episode with them, and it was good fun. It was definitely, fun to watch TV because we went through the whole process of trying to make beer from scratch and collect yeast and all this sort of thing, and try some of the local boozer that the Sudanese community brew from, fermented bread and things. So it was fun and engaging, but also we were telling the history of actually how the ancient Egyptians used it as a commodity to pay the wages of the people that built the pyramids.
Well, exactly.
So there was enough history in there for people who wanted that. But then, of course, they could go to their local, Dogfish Head pub and actually buy a pint of this Tar Henkert beer.
Well, yeah, and that's my point. I mean, there is a way to make a documentary that is both factual and also entertaining. I mean, Cosmos, the latest reiteration of Cosmos is certainly both of those things. I saw the Brewmasters episode that you were talking about, and yeah, it's not just that it had to do with beer, which everybody loves, but it was an entertaining way to present a topic of interest, and anybody. I think that's part of the problem with archaeology sometimes is we're kind of boring, and we don't really know how to not be boring. And I understand that that's stepping out of the box for a lot of people. I mean, we've all been to conferences and we've all been there with that guy that does nothing but just read from his paper in a monotone. And that's what people think of that's what people who know archaeology think of when they think an archaeological presentation. They don't think of something fun and the lighting's bright and the pictures are pretty and the presenter is engaged.
Yeah. Most archaeology conferences, if you were to film those, it would be a really good cure for insomnia.
Yeah, I don't...
Exactly, yeah. We've all been, as you said, at conferences and stuff. I don't know if you ever heard the comedian Eddie Izzard, where he does a bit about speed archaeology. If only archaeology was speeded up, then more people would be interested in it. And that was the thing with Time Team. People even criticized that, that it was dumbing down and that they were trying to do, archaeology in 3 days, which is totally ridiculous. But it caught the public's imagination. It was a slow build. It wasn't a success straight away. And this is the thing as well with a lot of shows now, is that they have to win the audience straight away, that the networks are not prepared to, let something be a slow burner. Like Time Team. I don't think something like Time Team really could come again unless it was probably, the BBC or some funder who could give it time to catch on with the public.
Well, and like you said, the way we consume media is changing. Television, the formats for television are completely different than the formats for online, even online shows. Not necessarily YouTube, because we're a big YouTube household here. We watch a lot of it. But it's like how we watch television when I was a kid, though. There are channels we go to. We watch shows. And our shows are, the longest I think is maybe 20 minutes. I mean, even TED Talks aren't longer than usually 20, 25 minutes.
Well,
exactly. I mean, it is. And now you've got new players, coming into the market. We're really excited. We have a partnership with a US company who's moving to the UK that we are hopeful we can announce in a couple of months' time. But they've set themselves up in the UK solely to deal with the new players in the market. So people like Netflix, YouTube are commissioning their own programming. Amazon is moving into, commissioning their own programming. The landscape is changing totally. And these people, these new players, have deep pockets, really deep pockets. And they want to make, if you look at what Netflix spent on House of Cards, millions per hour compared to traditional broadcasters. They wanted to make the best that there was, and that's what they're saying they want to do with documentaries. They want to turn documentaries on their head and make the best you can possibly make, because they only want to put that kind of content on their platforms, because their subscribers expect that. So
that presents a great opportunity for folks in archaeology.
Exactly. And the thing is that you can really, they're also not interested, these new broadcasters, if we can call them that, in the sort of traditional model of making documentaries. That's going to have to change, or the traditional model of making TV shows. They don't want to go through a commissioning process. You've got a situation now in UK and the US where sort of almost about 12 people control what goes on all the TV we see.
Oh, wow.
You know, they're saying Netflix, actually, we're not really interested. We want to know what you're making. Of course, we want to know what it is you want to sell to us, but essentially we're not commissioning it. You raise the money, you make the show, you go out there, then we'll buy it from you. And so it's changing. You know, people have got into that feeder system of, you know, doing your pitches, and the majority of all pitches, probably over 90%, that any production company pitches in any sort of field is rejected. So it's all, as I said, it comes down to a few individuals, and it's actually getting less because the way that the BBC's been restructured now, everything in the UK, they have less controllers. So actually, that 12 people is probably too many now. So, you know, it's going to be a really exciting time in the media landscape because, as you said, people who are growing up who treat media very differently, who treat news very differently, and they want to all that sort of merge together as well. So if they're, you know, watching a documentary, they want to click on and actually find out the Wikipedia link for that temple or tomb that they're watching. And then they want to, you know, go back to the documentary. Maybe they want to tweet about it at the same time. They're doing all these things at the same time they're watching it.
And I think that we should totally put links inside shows, because one of the things that used to aggravate the crap out of me with old documentaries is not being able to check sources. And we have a golden opportunity with the online media to set things up in a way that while you're watching that documentary on whatever, you can click on an image or click on a link that pops up on the screen or something, and it can immediately take you to the sources that they're citing or something that can give you more in-depth information than the show has time to go into.
Exactly. This is why, you know, we're so engaged with, you know, I'm getting involved with Ancient History Encyclopedia, because they can build those kind of platforms. They can bring those kind of numbers to our experts, and also, you know, open up a whole new world for them, for young people to find out about what these experts are actually doing.
Well, we've only got about 5 more minutes left. Ken, do you have any more questions you want to ask Nigel?
I mean, not off the top of my head. I mean, I just want to comment on how impressed I am by how this show went. At the very beginning, Nigel, I was kind of skeptical, only because, well, I mean, what I made this kind of snap judgment based on some of the shows in which you've been involved. But I was wrong to be so skeptical. And I think it's the key thing here is that we as professional archaeologists, again, we need to be engaged in passing along the information that we know, the research that we do, to a public that's obviously very interested. If we don't, we create a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled by all kinds of folks who don't necessarily have the same motivations and end game that we have in mind. And so all of these opportunities are important, and that archaeologists have to take advantage of them.
Yeah, so I mean, I would kind of like to, you know, sort of end with that. I think that's a wonderful sum up, and with an appeal to say to people, you know, we are interested in what they have to say. We do want them to sign up our expert database. We do want to hear from them about their projects, about their research, about their plans. Without them, without the experts, there is no past preservers. We're totally built on that, and we're built on their expertise. And we need them to come to us so we can get those programs made.
Well, and I would like to tell your experts as well. I mean, podcasting is also a new media. It's been around for a while, but it's really taking off and coming into its own. And if any of those people have a great idea for a podcast, go over to the Archaeological Podcasting Network and send Chris a pitch for a good show, because we're always looking for new shows as well. And the more of this we can get out there, and the more types of media we can reach into, the better we're going to be. Yeah, I mean, podcasting,
I mean, it's really taken off, isn't it? I mean, it's huge now.
Yeah, no, my podcast is more popular than my blog, and my blog has longer staying power. I'm really surprised at how well the podcasts that we have on the network are doing. And I'd love to see more of that kind of stuff happen.
Cool. Well, we're happy to share that with our folks, definitely.
Well, Nigel, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for telling us about past preservers. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks for changing Ken's mind.
Absolutely. That may be
actually, it's a good job you said that, because actually I've got a new girl working with us in the office now, Natasha, and she said that actually the same thing. When she first looked at the website, she was like, oh, what are these crappy shows? And she said, you need a new show reel. Actually, we do need a new show reel, showing more of a kind of balance of the type of shows that we've done.
Yes.
So it's time I did that.
Yes.
So thanks for that.
Yes, I changed my mind, which is probably the first time that's ever happened in my life. So that's pretty impressive, Nigel.
Fantastic. Well, lovely to talk to both of you.
It was very nice talking to you. And guys, thank you very much for joining me for the podcast, and I will talk to you guys later.
All right.
Thanks.
Raise your trials as one will call. No, we don't do dinosaurs.
Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. Our music was provided by Archaeology Productions. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and rate us on iTunes or Stitcher, and share us wherever you use social media. You can contact us with your questions, comments, or angry email at archifantasies@gmail.com. You can follow the podcast at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/archifantasies. You can follow the blog at www.archifantasies.com and get updates on Tumblr and Twitter at ArchyFantasies. You can also look for us on Facebook. If you're looking for the show notes for this episode, go to the podcast website at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/ArchyFantasies. Thanks again for listening.
No, we don't do dinosaurs. No, we don't do dinosaurs. We don't do dinosaurs.
This show is produced by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.